Good afternoon. Thanks for being here again. I hope you had some good food and are ready for the next session of digital experiences. We have some digitals. Yeah, it should work. About digital experiences. So, with further ado, I want a big applause for Christian Bennek.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Yesterday, I hope you had a good party, all of you. I was at a crossroads yesterday because Layla shot the sheriff, so I chose to do cocaine with Mr. Slowhand in Copenhagen. Yesterday, I went back, instead of staying here, to listen to Eric Clapton in Copenhagen, which was a very good experience. Talk about experiences, how do we supercharge those with Umbraco Heartcore today? That's what I'll show you. So I'll start out by talking a little bit about where we are in terms of how we see agencies today, and then we'll take it from there. So supercharging digital experiences with hardcore is sort of a new thing, mainly because hardcore is still fairly new, at least in a state where we can start to really deploy it into large-scale productions as well. So Uniform, where I come from, we work with Umbraco, and it's a fairly new thing for us to work with Umbraco because we're a fairly new company. We do digital orchestration, and I'll tell you a lot more about how we do that on top of, among other things, Umbraco Heartcore. We believe that you as agencies are the ones that are going to, anytime long, there it is again, for a long time, because the scale of different solutions that you can choose from is just so big out there. So you guys are the one that needs to really do the consulting for your customers and make sure that they make the right. You make sure that they get exactly what they need for their business needs. Remember the speak earlier from Thomas Elblom from Pincha, where he was talking about how do you combine this digital experience platform into something that has to do with business needs. So with that said, when Uniform partners start using Uniform, we're about making sure that you can fast track your basically your journey towards being composable, moving very fast with headless experiences, etc. So to do that, Uniform is basically trying to figure out, make sure that when it rings really fast. Oh, geez. Lucky me, huh? Hang on. Yeah, great. Good to see you and good to hear from you. Huh? Customer. Sorry, 2 seconds. Okay, something new, digital. Okay, so fast, as in really fast? Okay. Yeah, you have some Shopify, but you want to deploy Umbraco with that now? Okay. Let me get back to you in 20 minutes-ish. And I think we're there. Okay, see ya. Woo. Lucky me, huh? So apparently, if you're up for it, I have just received a phone call from a friend of mine that needs a new digital something, combining, among other things, Shopify and Umbraco. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to take that challenge and see if we can actually stitch together a stack, deploy it, and if time permits, let's get it all the way onto the edge and deploy it as something that is edge executable within the next 20 minutes-ish. So I have a big team behind me. They're now working, trying to figure out what do we need to build, how do we do it, how fast can we do it. So they're working with the customer in the back, trying to figure out all of these things. We know it's going to be Umbraco, it's going to be some Shopify. We need some analytics as well in there. So we need something that can stitch this together really, really fast. Uniform is a platform that does orchestration, that allows you to take any framework, any front-end framework, stitch it together with basically any platform underneath. We come out of the box with a variety of integrations. Some of them I'll show you today. What I'll do is I'll take my agency framework that I have as a package, so I'll deploy that, stitch it together, put Uniform on top, and then bring in these different platforms, and then start deploying from there. So I hope it's okay with you that I'm going to show you that from the ground up, so there will be a lot of work that I'll show you. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we'll build. And it's going to be warp speed from here on. So hang on to hats, hair, and everything that is not tightly fastened. So the first thing that I need to do is, of course, I did prepare a little, so sorry for that, to make sure that I remember everything. We need to scaffold the project first. So getting that out or in here is the first thing that I'll do. So I should now have my project set up, so I can go to here. Let's see. Yeah, it looks okay. So let's get the code up and running here. So I now have a piece of code running. What? No, please not. Go away. We'll just log in again. Live demos is what we do. So I have my code up and running, and I also need a project in Uniform. Uniform is free, so you can just go to Uniform now if you want to, and basically do what I do. So what I'll do first is I'll set up an empty project. A project is where we stitch everything together. So first off, as with any kind of headless solution, we need some API keys. So I'll just get that up and running immediately. So we'll call this CG 2022. And we'll say for that project, yeah, give me full access. We don't want to be limited by anything for now. So I got the API keys. There we go. In my project, I need my API keys so I can take all of my data from Storybook, because while we're working, my designers in the back are doing the same. So they've been working with the friend that just called me and figured out how do these components look, what is it, what kind of properties do they have, and then we brought them out of Storybook and into YAML files that I can now deploy into Uniform. So that happens in the back while, it's just like sleeping sometimes. Stuff happens when you sleep. So first off, let's get the API key in here so we can start working. Sorry, that was the wrong one. There we go. So here we got my team. Get that. So API key in there, and a project ID as well. Get that there. And then we'll make a copy of what we call the quick connect, because we need that for a bit later. And then I'll just bring in another little feature that I'll be needing slightly later, which is a way for me to switch to a different proxy. And I also need to define how I want to be able to connect to a live preview. So everything is now basically up, so I'm ready to remove my API key and go into my project and start scaffolding what the customer will be working with, because we want to give the customer a proper UI where they can create experiences and where they can do personalization and testing, so we're ready to deploy that. To get that in there, we do need all our packages in there. So what we'll do here is we'll do push components here, sorry. Push components. That should allow us now to push what I just saw before I had in Storybook. So we'll push that in there, and then we'll also push all of the criteria that I want to use for personalization, which is what we came up with. Sorry. One thing I see live demos. We just need all our packages running in here. There we go. So as part of the initial scaffolding and communication with the customer, we had a personalization workshop with them. So we figured out how do they want to personalize, what do they want to personalize on, figured out some specific metrics, and also wired up some GUIP that we can do from the edge when we start deploying that. So what's happening now is that we're synchronizing all of this into to our solution. And as soon as that is up and running, we will see that our component library has now been filled with a bunch of components that I can start building with. Uniform is built on components. We don't store the actual implementation. These are just simple configurations. Everything you see is configuration, and is one of the reasons why we can move so fast. So now we're actually up and running. I'll just turn the sound off here. Good. So now we have a dev server up and running, and we can actually start to build something. Up until now, we're still lacking some integrations, so we'll call this a Codegarden in lack of better things that we could call it. So creating this and creating what we call a composition is essentially a way for us to create a UI that is completely customizable that business users can start to use. So essentially, you can use composition tools like this to compose across all of the different integrations that Uniform offers, whereas Umbraco Heartcore is one, and we'll be working with Heartcore and Shopify today. And how this then works is that we basically just drop them in here. We don't have so much time today, so we cannot really dive into all the details, but we're basically bringing components into different placeholders, and that structure can then be rendered in a front-end of choice. So we're not bound to any specific front-end framework, and there's nothing in that front-end framework when you get all the way into the components that define how you should build your front-end. So you have complete freedom in terms of how you build your components and how they're wired up. One of the things that I'll do sort of when we get a bit further along is I'll drop in a piece of middleware that allow me to translate the configuration that I'm creating here and translate what I get from the configuration into actual data from the backends. And I'll throw in a little one here later because I want to switch out my commerce engine as well. So once I've built this, I want to switch in another commerce engine, and I want to do that very easily. So we're composing a system as we sort of move along here. So for now, we're basically just building what will, in this scenario, become just one page. A composition can also be rendered into multiple pages, so it could be a template if you want to. We could potentially create a category page for Shopify if we wanted to, but for now, we're just building what essentially resembles a landing page. There are a few things that I want to do now because I want to add my integrations. So as I said, we want to have Umbraco and Shopify in here. These are some of the ones that we're working with now. So a good variety of different platforms, CMSs, commerce engines, CDNs, deployment pipelines, etc. So you can basically stitch together this highly composable stack where everything can be very nicely composed in the sense that building with Uniform means that your customers can truly grow their stacks. So we want to talk and like to talk about not necessarily best of need or best of breed, but think about what your customers can actually execute on. So there is a best of ability in there. And if you have something that is truly composable, as they mature, maybe they want to move away from Shopify to a slightly more enterprise kind of commerce engine, then they would be able to basically just compose that in there based on pure configuration, and we would be able to switch out the way that we connect to that. So far, so good. We also just need Shopify in place here. So we'll bring Shopify in. And Shopify does require a few more pieces of information, so let me grab that because I need that as well in my actual code. So I'll just stop my server for a second, find my environment file, and put that in there, and then I'll copy this information into my configuration. So we are truly doing this live, and either I will succeed or I will blow this miserably. Let's hope that we actually make all of this work. And I remember to press all the right buttons here. So, done. Something went wrong. What did go wrong here? Someone has also made a spelling foobar. Let's see, what do we have? Interesting. Let's try it out. See, what did I miss? Did anyone see if I missed anything? Yeah, maybe a little thingy somewhere. Let's see. We'll do it like that. I think that's it. So we'll try again. Interesting. Otherwise, we'll just do something else, and then we'll bring in a different commerce engine. Then we cannot use Shopify, and then we'll just do... maybe it's okay. Let's double check. So what I want to do now is I want to start building out my page. So I'm now connecting to Umbraco Heartcore, pulling content directly from there. We have different components that we created for the customer, so that we can actually start to render these things. The customer wants to be able to see what they're building, so let's give them that as well. So we'll just set up a quick live preview here as well. So I know this is currently running here on localhost 5000. So we'll do it like this and say it's called secret equal asteroid. Whoops, roid, like that. That looks about right, otherwise we'll fix it in a second. So now that we have that, we will see a preview button showing up. There we go. And let's just check this out, see if we can actually get some data in there now. Good. So while I'm speaking, the developers in the back are now building out the actual front-end components. So when this hopefully renders and doesn't break, what we will see is actually not the final components, but a placeholder. So business users can easily communicate to developers, hey, I want to build out something and I need this type of component. And I also need to give you the data contract that you want to go and implement. So for Heartcore, the data contract currently looks like this. So it basically just says it's a Heartcore type with an ID. And if you had access to my Heartcore, you would be able to find that piece of content, of course, in my Heartcore installation. So in my Heartcore installation, this is the piece of content that I'm touching. So this is a standard data type, content type in Umbraco Heartcore that I'm pulling out. So from Uniform's side, we're basically just touching the CMS here, and we're touching the content model, trying not to push configuration about how things are being displayed into the content model. Let's try and do a bit more here. And I'm pretty sure that in a second, the developers are actually ready to deploy something. So let's put in a featured product, which is a bag from Shopify, but let's also put in that product collection list. So we're going to be selling some shoes for you guys. So let's put in some shoes. So whoops, we'll search for shoes in Shopify. There we go. We got the Sheepatrons and some shoe we don't know much about. And then let's just add the last piece of information here. So now I have the actual structure ready for a full landing page that I will want to render somewhere. And as I said, this is actually just configuration. So what we've constructed now is a piece of JSON that will deploy or basically be pulled by my front end into my application. So rendering this now, as you can see, now we have all the properties, all the components in place. So as I said, I think the developers are actually ready. So let's wire up some front-end code here. So what I'll do here is, ahead of time, I did have them implement this, so I can just wire them up now. And now, let's just get that running. So let's see, what did we miss here? What did I actually break? I did break something, which is interesting. Yeah, sorry. Let's try and pull this out. So hang on a second. My environment file. There we go. Let's try and run it again. This is always great. Let's see if we can get this baby up and running. Jesus Christ. This is perfect. What is actually breaking? I'm not really sure. I had some serious issues with my internet connection before, but let's just fall back a second here. Because I have a backup. So let's just try and spin that up and then continue from there. Let's see if this will actually help me out. That's what happens when you do live demos sometimes. Interesting why that breaks. I'm not really sure why. Where did we go? There we are. Yarn. Get this one. And let's see if I'm really being hit by something insane here. No, there we go. So this is exactly the same piece of code. Don't want to spend time on figuring out. I probably forgot something somewhere. So what we have now is essentially that the devs are done with our implementation. So what they have done is that they have gone ahead and done the actual implementation of the header, the footer, the hero, and everything that needs to render. So inside of Uniform, as I just showed you before, we have the piece of configuration that is now ready to be personalized. One of the things that I did deploy before as well was the actual personalization that you would need to set up. So what I did here was I did set up some campaigns. I did set up a specific target that I would like to use on Netlify. So I want to do some geo-based personalization on Netlify. So we can take this and deploy it through an edge function all the way into Netlify and set it up there. Uniform's personalization engine runs with what we call intents, among other things. Think about an intent, what your visitors are trying to achieve on your website. So when someone arrives on your website, they might want to, in this scenario, buy a product, buy a pair of shoes. So the intent could be that they have participated in a campaign, maybe they have visited particular categories that we have picked up on. So there could be someone that is looking for hipster products, or some lady that are looking for luxury products. An audience is defined as well. So we can have, in this scenario, female or male visitors, depending on maybe who they are, where they come from, or how we segment them. But we also have a little interesting thing called quirks. Quirks is essentially a way to integrate external data into the engine. And what we have here is an example of how we pull in data from external sources. This is Netlify that we use for that. So when we actually render this through Netlify's edge function, Netlify will help us populate these informations, and then we can use them directly to personalize on. So what we're doing now is essentially setting up personalization that will run across multiple sources and will allow us to create a highly personalized experience across, for instance, something like Umbraco Heartcore, Shopify, and a variety of other connections. So to make the personalization happen, there are multiple ways to score this. We provide a simple tool that allows us to work with this. So we could, for instance, say that if I had a bit of value in Codegarden, then I would see one hero. If I had value in a different one for women, and that was stronger than the signal I had for Codegarden, then I would see this. So as you can see, we move very fast from nothing to something that is fully personalized. And all of this can happen because of simple integrations that are done through our mesh integration kit. The mesh integration kit is completely open for you guys as well. So you can choose to use any of the built-in integrations that exist, or you can choose to basically create your own. There is an ability to create what is called a team integration, so you can connect any arbitrary system to the same feature, basically. And if some of you are thinking, what about classic Umbraco? So if you have a classic Umbraco with a headless API on top, you would easily be able to basically roll such an integration on top of that to make sure that you could now connect to that same API. The Monsterpedia is a simple example of doing that, connecting to a standardized API for Dungeons and Dragons. Just to give an example of how this can be done. It's typically a 2 to 3 day effort to connect any system to the platform. So the next thing we could do is, of course, take a look at what happens if we want to deploy this somewhere. So I did go ahead and deploy this one as well onto the edge. So exactly what you're seeing, and then we'll just put this on, I think it's called landing. There we go. So what this now is this is actually running on Netlify's edge functions, which means it's a static deployment with no connection to any backend system. So everything is available directly on Netlify, which also means that the personalization happening is exceptionally fast and has no impact on your performance. So traditional personalization engines are either happening on the server, and then something happens when you render a page, but this is scalable basically at a new level because you put this on the edge and now it's globally available. And what we typically see is performance sub 50 milliseconds for time to first byte anywhere in the world, also when this is personalized. And the reason why we're seeing this hipster one now is actually because, as you can see, this is running on top of Netlify. And Netlify now has some information about me and where I am that is automatically populated. And we basically pull that out and use that for the personalization. So as soon as I enter the page, we use that GUIP-based information to create a personalized experience for me. And then I could choose to override that for the women and say, okay, what if the women actually were here? Then we're personalizing. So this is now happening on the edge, which means this happens. and the edge function now executes this. And on hydration, we get this information. So the personalization also happens in a way where you don't have the flickering of traditional third-party scripts that would be communicating back and forth. So I think that leaves us roughly 5 minutes for questions or anything that you want to deep dive into. And then I'll be on stage as well for the speaker panel a bit later. Are there any thoughts or questions that you have? So what you have seen now is a lot in a very, very short time. And even though I practiced this like 1 billion times, I forgot something. We do this live always. And when I get off the stage, I'll probably figure out I forgot something crazy somewhere that just broke it. But that's how it is. The companies that work with Uniform do what I just did for you guys here on stage. They have frameworks where Uniform is part of. They have connected it into their build pipelines, into their design systems, which means they can move very, very fast. If there are no questions, I'll just see if we can get Bigcommerce in here. So let's try that. We have a few minutes left. There are a few things that I want to do. First off, I want to add Bigcommerce as an integration, and then I want to replace one of my product displays. So I'll pull in a Bigcommerce integration here in my code, add that in there. And then I want to add my integration. So I'll find Bigcommerce, there we are, add that in there. So I have one store hash. So these are just standard API keys from Bigcommerce. Put that in there. Then I want to do another thing, because in the back here I have a slightly more advanced proxy where I basically offload all of my translation of data. So I'm running that on a Vercel proxy. So in there I also have a Bigcommerce integration running. So what I can do now is I can take my featured product, and now I'm basically replacing Shopify with Bigcommerce. So I'm removing a parameter that was previously connected to Shopify, and now I'm replacing that with Bigcommerce. So that's what it takes to replace an entire commerce engine for a part of your page. I can now go to my page here and find my featured product, and now give it a different bag. So let's find a different bag to see that this is actually now rendering. So we'll choose this accessories bag instead. Save that. And are we running? We are. So let's see if that doesn't work. So there we go. So now we have not Umbraco and Shopify, but Umbraco, Shopify, and then we have put the customer on a process where they can now slowly migrate to something more enterprise if they want to migrate to that. So that was what I was planning to talk about today. Highly composable systems with Umbraco Heartcore and a variety of other platforms. Sorry for the little hiccup, but we managed to get there anyways. That's what we do, live demos. That's how it is. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Managed to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.